Alright, welcome back to JavaScript for Beginners. In this section, we're looking at ES6, also known as ECMAScript 2015. In this lesson, we're going to look at let statements in JavaScript. What is the let statement in JavaScript? The let statement allows for block scope to declare a local variable. This differs from the var keyword, which declares a variable globally or locally to the scope of a function. In many ways, it will operate just like the var keyword, but there are significant differences. We'll look at the implementation of both let and var and see what those similarities and differences are. Let's first look at some basics of what we can do that is the same. We can assign a variable with both let and var and assign them a value. You can also reassign the values with let as you would with var. We can assign new values to the variables created with both var and let. Now, let's look at the first difference. With the var keyword, we can use the var keyword again with a variable that has already been declared, and it will not throw any kind of error. Even though we have used the var keyword again, we don't run into any kind of problem. However, if we were to use the let keyword again for greeting, we are going to return an error. This is something called the temporal dead zone. Redeclaring the same variable within the same function or block scope raises a syntax error. Now, let's look at the most notable difference between var and let. Function scope and block scope. If you are newer to JavaScript and aren't clear what function scope is, let's go ahead and look at some code. Our console.log method is going to return the values of variable's first name, and then we use a string of a space and add to that the value of the last name. Our variable first name is declared globally, so our log to the console will be able to see it and access its value of the string Joe. However, var last name of Smith isn't in the global scope, but defined within the scope of the function surname in which it was declared in. So when we try to log to the console the value of last name, we can't see it and we get an error. Last name has not been defined. Now, let's look at the difference between function and block scoping. The var keyword allows us to use functional scope. That means that when we declare a variable, it is going to belong to the global scope or the scope of the function that it was declared within. But what happens when we declare a variable within block scope, such as a conditional statement or a switch statement? Let's look at some code. If we were to look at this block of code declaring our variables with the var keyword, what would we expect to log to the console? Because the var keyword is not declared in a function, both count and more have a global scope. This means that our console.log can find the count value of 4 and add it to the more value of 1 and add them together to get a result of 5. This is because they are global variables and our console.log method can see them both. Let's try this again. We'll look at a similar block of code. Now when we try to print this out to our console, what result are we going to get? The code is exactly the same, except inside of the code blocks, we have the let keyword. The result is that we're going to get an error that more is not defined. One quick side note. If you are following along in your console, you will need to make sure that you have refreshed your page, or our console.log will grasp the variable more that you declared with the var keyword in the previous example. So why does using the let statement result in the variable more being undefined? Because variables are function scoped and let statements are block scoped. What that means is that when the console.log method is looking for these variables, it sees count in the global scope, but it can't see more because the let keyword, unlike the var keyword, hides it in the block scope it is declared in. Alright, that's all we have for now on the let statement. I'll see you in the lab where we put what we have learned into practice.